Why do all these stories about unfaithful wives sound so cliché? It's always the same. He comes home early, finds an email, catches her with her lover at the office Christmas party, accidentally drives past a motel and sees her car parked outside a room. There must be other ways for a cuckold to find out about his wife's infidelity. At least that's what I'd like to think. But maybe not. Maybe there are only half a dozen ways for a man to realize that his marriage has simply fallen apart. I know that in my case, I was so in love with my wife, with whom I had lived for 10 years, that it took a bolt from the blue to realize what had been going on between my wife and her lover for the past 6 months. I had no idea. Shannon and I met in our second year of college and hit it off right away. She had gorgeous blonde hair and blue eyes, a pretty face and a slim body with long legs. In short, she was perfect, at least to me. But despite all that, I fell in love with her at first sight. She was smart, modest, and funny. I could talk to her for hours about anything. We became best friends, and 3 months into our relationship, we opened up to each other in a new way, if you know what I mean. At that moment, it was the most exciting thing that had ever happened to me. It was awkward and uncomfortable. From that moment on, I never doubted that Shannon and I would be together forever. Or as it turned out, for 10 years. My name is Stuart Gray, but everyone calls me Stu. I was born and raised in a medium-sized town in the Midwest. I am 180 centimeters tall and weigh 84 kg. I am considered a fairly handsome man with brown eyes and sandy hair. I am a contractor by profession. I have my own small company with a permanent staff of 5. We mainly do interior renovations for people who can afford it, and our work is considered excellent. Shannon teaches music at a local secondary school, and together we earn very well, have a beautiful home, and since we are both in our 30s, we plan to start a family in the near future. As I said, the first 10 years of our marriage were wonderful. We hugged every night. It was an unbreakable rule. And every morning, waking up next to Shannon, I admired her beauty and how lucky I was to have her as my wife. I can honestly say that although I would prefer to live with her every day, if I had to give my life for her, I would do so without hesitation. Perhaps I should have said that last sentence in the past tense because something so unexpected and emotionally overwhelming happened to me that I still can't say I've fully recovered from it. As a contractor in the Midwest, most of our work is in the spring, summer, and fall. People just don't like having their homes torn apart when it's freezing outside and there's a meter of snow on the ground. So Shannon and I usually took our holidays during the Christmas and New Year holidays, as well as the spring break. In the summer, when I was busy making money, Shannon would sometimes take a week off to visit her relatives, go shopping with her 2 sisters, or take a couple of summer courses to get her teaching certificate. Every winter, we loved to travel to warm places, and the winter we died, we chose an all-inclusive resort in the Bahamas, 2 weeks in paradise to reconnect body and soul. However, I soon discovered how misguided that idea was. First of all, I should explain that before Shannon and I boarded the plane in Minneapolis, I not only had no idea, but I would have called you a liar and spat in your face if you dared to suggest that there was anything wrong with our marriage. We were the perfect couple, so madly in love and deeply connected in every way that it seemed as if we were 2 people merged into one body. Our union was so strong that nothing on earth or in heaven could separate us. I seem to have forgotten that there is also hell, and although I didn't know it at the time, I was standing on the edge of a precipice, ready to fall into a molten abyss. I first sensed that something was wrong when I was going through security at Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. The line was long, with many people trying to transition from the bitter cold to the tropical heat. And as Shannon and I waited our turn to go through the scanners, I noticed that the man standing next to us was looking at Shannon. This wasn't unusual. My wife is a striking woman, and men often give her slightly leering looks. But this look was different, as if he was trying to get her attention. I wanted to find out more, so I pretended to look at my boarding pass while keeping an eye on the guy out of the corner of my eye. His glances in her direction were furtive, to say the least. And then I noticed that Shannon quickly looked at him and waved her hand almost imperceptibly as if to say, "Not now." He smiled, nodded, and I almost threw up my breakfast. I was stunned. Then I realized that these 2 knew each other. How well I didn't know. But that knowledge served as a warning sign for me. As we went through security, I watched them closely, and neither of them made any attempt to strike up a conversation. I know I became very quiet, but Shannon didn't seem to notice. Her mind was preoccupied with something else. I hoped that this man, whoever he was, wasn't flying with us, but when we boarded the plane and took our seats, I realized I was wrong. He was sitting in the aisle seat about 15 rows in front of us. Another thing that struck me as odd was that Shannon had decided she wanted to sit by the aisle in our row. That never happens. She always wants to sit by the window, but not this time. I asked her what was wrong, since I had booked a window seat for her in advance and taken a middle seat for myself, but she just replied that she didn't like the breakfast and didn't want to bother anyone if she needed to use the toilet. I asked the woman sitting in the aisle if she would mind switching to the window seat, and when I explained that my wife had stomach problems, she readily agreed, and we switched seats. I don't usually have trouble sleeping on planes, and the long flight from Minneapolis to Miami would have given me a chance to catch some sleep, but in my agitated state, I couldn't fall asleep even if I pretended to be asleep. We put our bags in the overhead compartment, and Shannon put her purse under the seat in front of her. As soon as the plane took off, I took out my twins' baseball cap, put it on my forehead, and pretended to fall asleep. I left enough room to watch Shannon, and after 15 minutes, she looked at me, made sure I was asleep, got up and headed down the aisle to the toilet. I moved to my seat so I could see the entire aisle and noticed that as she passed the seat I now assumed was occupied by her friend, she reached out as if to steady herself and lightly touched the guy's shoulder. More proof that there was something going on between them and that it wasn't just a coincidence. I noticed that they weren't looking at each other, and Shannon headed for the restroom. When she came out a few minutes later, she looked straight at him, and he stood up and walked over to her. When they met in the aisle, instead of one of them stepping aside to let the other pass, they ended up face to face and paused for a moment. He put his hand on her waist and she spoke to him. They both smiled warmly, and she continued on her way to her seat. That was enough for me to realize that these two had known each other for a long time and were obviously close in some way. At the same time, the realization that my beautiful marriage was in jeopardy and could end came crashing down on me like a bolt from the blue. I suddenly felt so irritated that I turned away from Shannon when she sat down and fastened her seatbelt. How could she do this to me? To us? How long had this been going on? Who was this man, and how far had their relationship gone? For the rest of the flight, I tried to make sense of everything I had seen and prayed that when we boarded the plane in Nassau, he wouldn't be on board, but somehow I knew he would be. To my horror, I was right. As soon as Shannon and I boarded the plane, I saw him sitting 5 rows behind us. He was reading the in-flight magazine and paid no attention to us as we took our seats. Shannon, who seemed to have recovered from her stomach problems, took her usual seat by the window. The flight to Nassau was uneventful, and after landing, we picked up our luggage, rented a car, and headed for the resort. While I was driving, Shannon texted me, "Who are you texting?" "Just my mom and sisters, letting them know we got here." Yeah, maybe, I thought, but I'd like to check for myself. Isn't it strange when suspicions start to pile up? Our room was beautiful, with a balcony overlooking the ocean and one of the pools. As I unpacked, I realized I had to make a statement to get my wife back. So I went up to Shannon and said, "Do you understand how much I love you?" "I love you too, baby," she replied. There was a strange gleam in her eyes as if she wasn't in the room with me. "You know I would never do anything to hurt you, Shannon?" She flinched slightly. "I know, Stu. And I know you would never do anything bad to me or our beautiful marriage," I told her. And she flinched again, and I saw tears running down her cheeks. "Of course, Stu, you know I wouldn't." But she didn't look at me, just stared at the floor. Then I knew I had probably lost the battle. If she didn't know it yet, I now knew that she was going to give herself to another man. I let her go and quickly went to the bathroom, hoping I wouldn't lose her before I got to the toilet. I sat in the bathroom for a few minutes, trying to collect myself and asking myself the same questions over and over. How could this have happened? What had I done to make her leave me for another man? Why hadn't I noticed anything a few weeks or months ago? But most importantly, what can I do to keep her from destroying us completely, or is it already too late? I washed my face and came out of the bathroom. Shannon was standing there with a strange look on her face. "Oh my God, Stu, I got my period and I didn't bring anything with me." "What?" I asked. "My period, Stu, it just started." "But you had it a week ago. How could it start again?" "I don't know, but sometimes it happens. Maybe it's because I'm nervous about the holiday. I need to go to the shop and buy some tampons." And she left, closing the door behind her. My first thought was that maybe it was for the best. It would slow down the romance between her and her boyfriend, whoever he was. My second thought was, wait, that doesn't make any sense. In all the years we've been together, this has never happened before. She takes birth control pills and her periods have always been as regular as clockwork. So why would she make this up? Unless, unless she thought that her period would prevent me from pursuing her, and she could devote all her love and passion to a new man. That must be it. And if it is, then she's not the woman I married. No one can be that deceitful and cruel. She must really hate me to let me plan and pay for this trip, so she could cut me out of her life and give everything she has to a man I don't even know. I felt completely lost, as if I was going crazy. Who was this woman I had loved with all my heart for over 10 years? Looking around the room, I saw that she had left her mobile phone next to the television. I turned it on, not knowing if she had changed the password, and found that she hadn't. Another mistake on her part. I went into her messages and read the last message from someone named Anthony Eisner. I scrolled back to the beginning of the conversation, which started when we were driving to the resort. Anthony. Hey, babe. Can't wait to have you as our guest. Shannon. You little shit, you almost got us busted at the airport. Anthony. I couldn't help myself, Shannon. I almost kissed you on the plane when we were standing in the aisle. Stu was fast asleep, so you could have, but it might have looked bad to the others. I have to go. We're almost there. The conversation between them resumed when we arrived at our room at the resort. Anthony. I'm in the lobby. Are you here yet? Shannon. In my room. Stu's in the bathroom. He's acting strange. Anthony. What does it matter? When are you going to leave Stu so I can be alone with you? I told you from the beginning that I can't and won't do that, Tony. Stu is a wonderful husband. He loves me, cares for me, and gives me a life you could never provide. Anthony. But you know I'm better. Shannon. Ha ha ha, yes, you're better at that, but I need more and Stu gives me that. Stu and I are planning to start a family. So the next 2 weeks will be just for you, baby. I told Stu I'd stop taking birth control pills when we got home, but I actually stopped taking them almost 3 weeks ago. So now you have a chance to give me a child that Stu will raise, thinking it's his. Anthony. You're so cruel, Shannon, but I like it. But what if he gets you pregnant? Shannon. I'll tell him that my period started again, and strangely enough, I'll have it the whole time we're on holiday. Anthony. Are you sure he'll believe you? Shannon. Of course I am. He loves me and knows I would never lie to him. Besides, when we get home, I'll make it up to him. Anthony. Damn, he's such an idiot. What a loser. I stood there in complete shock and started changing her phone, but then stopped. There's a chance I'll find a way to use these messages as evidence in the divorce proceedings. I started changing her phone to mine, but then I thought, screw her. My phone has all my personal information. She got herself into this mess. She can get herself out of it, so I left both phones alone. I figured she wouldn't notice her phone was missing right away, and by then I'd be long gone. I felt bile rising in my throat and I felt nauseous. I walked over to the window and looked out at the beautiful Caribbean Sea. 8 hours ago, I was the happiest man on earth, getting ready for 2 weeks of romance under the tropical sun with the love of my life, my wife, my other half. And now my world was falling apart before my eyes. Never in my life had I felt so lonely, depressed, and angry. I wanted to hurt them both, to destroy them for making me look like such a pathetic fool. Fortunately, the rational part of my brain gradually took over. Divorce was the right decision. I couldn't stay with the cheating woman who had been my loving wife. But that wasn't all. I wanted revenge. Looking out the window, I accidentally glanced towards the pool and saw them hugging each other tightly. I wanted to scream, but instead I took a deep breath and grabbed the video camera I had bought especially for this trip, but was now using to record their actions. Apparently, while Shannon was unpacking, she didn't bother to look out the window of our room, otherwise she would have noticed the pool, which was clearly visible. The camera had a decent zoom, so I was able to get some good close-ups. I didn't feel guilty watching her, but I would use this against them later. I needed a plan, and fast, but my stomach was in knots and my brain was frozen. Then it occurred to me how she was going to spend time with her lover if I was around. They probably had a plan to keep me occupied while they were together. As I thought about it, a simple thought occurred to me. Shannon wanted to spend 2 weeks with her lover Anthony to get pregnant, and I wanted to get back at her, so why not do it now instead of waiting and ruining their plans? First, I had to figure out how they would distract me while they were having fun together. I was still taking notes when I saw them kiss again, and then Shannon quickly turned and walked away. She would be back in our room any minute, and I had to pull myself together. So I went back to the bathroom and turned on the shower to relax. If she asked why, I would just say it would help me relax after the flight and get rid of the smell of the plane. 5 minutes later, I heard our bedroom door open and close. "I'm back," she exclaimed. I brought us some water." "Great. I'll be out of the shower in a minute." Why did she bring us water? All the rooms in the hotel have bottles of water. Then it dawned on me. She was going to drug me with sleeping pills, and that would be the end of it. I started thinking about what to do. If I didn't drink the water she brought, she would realize I was suspicious. If I drank the water and it was the same, I would leave, and she and her lover would return to her room. What should I do? I turned off the shower and slowly dried myself off, thinking about what to do. At that moment, Shannon knocked on the door. "Are you okay? You've been in there a long time." I could hear the alarm in her voice. I couldn't help but wonder if she was worried about me or about being late for an important date. My anger began to rise again, but I tried to maintain my composure when I opened the door and saw her standing by the bed drinking from a bottle of water. She handed me a second bottle, and I noticed that it was already open. "You need to drink water in this weather." She looked me in the eyes and quickly looked away. I took the bottle, pretended to take a big gulp, then turned and went back to the bathroom. Quickly but quietly, I spat the water into the sink and emptied the bottle. Taking one of the bottles of water from the bathroom cabinet, I filled the empty bottle Shannon had given me. When I returned to the room, she was busy unpacking her things, putting them in drawers and hanging clothes in the wardrobe, so I was sure she hadn't seen me pour out the water and fill the bottle. Leaving the bathroom, I continued drinking the water. I started looking around our room and noticed that she had laid out a red dress. "Are you going to wear that for dinner? If it doesn't fit you, it'll be a waste. You know how much I love that dress." As I said this, I realized she was dressing up for him, not for me. "Well, I brought it, so I might as well wear it." She smiled. "Aren't you tired after the long trip? You must be exhausted." Bingo, I thought. This bitch really wore me out, but how could I show it? I needed more proof of their affair, so I pretended I wanted to sleep. I took another sip of water and lowered my eyes as if I were tired. In reality, I felt like I had drunk several cans of Red Bull. My heart was pounding in my chest, and it took all my self-control to pretend to be sleepy. "Now that you mention it, I'm a bit tired. What time do we need to be ready for dinner?" I asked, pretending to be lazy. "Dinner won't be for another couple of hours. Why don't you lie down and rest? I'll wake you up when it's time to get ready." She said it with such sincerity that I almost believed her. I yawned. "Okay, sweetheart. I wouldn't mind resting. Just don't let me fall asleep for too long. I want to spend as much time with you as possible. I love you so much." I noticed her flinch, as if I had touched a raw nerve. "I love you too," she said with less conviction. I lay down on the bed and very slowly began to pretend to fall asleep. Soon I was snoring softly and I heard Shannon take out her phone to call. "Hey, it worked. He's out cold. How long will he sleep? Then we'll have the whole night together." She giggled, and I almost choked, but managed to keep up the pretense of being asleep. "Meet me in an hour at the Sandpiper bar. I want to freshen up a bit." She giggled again. "You're so bad." "I can't wait, lover. Bye." She hung up and continued getting ready for her big night. I watched her, barely opening my eyes. What a slut! Anger rose in me again, but I tried my best not to show it. She continued getting ready, then went into the bathroom and started taking a shower. I knew she'd be in there for about 10 minutes, so as soon as I heard the shower door close, I quickly got up and went over to her handbag. I started looking for sleeping pills or whatever she had put in the bottle of water she had given me. I came across a bottle of pills with no label indicating the contents. I opened it and found about a dozen small white capsules. She must have put them in my water, so I carefully poured out about 5 pills and put the bottle back in the bag. Then I took a napkin, wrapped the pills in it, and put them in the pocket of the shorts I was wearing. Quickly approaching the bed, I heard her turn off the shower. I lay down as I was and continued to doze while she got ready for her date. It took her another 45 minutes to get ready, but as soon as she left the house, I got up and got dressed as quickly as I could. Lying there, I managed to come up with a plan. First, I needed to get more video evidence of their relationship. Second, I had to ruin their plans for the rest of the trip. I wasn't sure how I would do it, but I knew they would both end up in a bad situation. Third, I would return home a few days earlier than our trip was supposed to end and start divorce proceedings. I wanted to end things with Shannon before she could do anything to stop me or delay me, such as emptying our bank accounts and canceling all our credit cards. No, I had to do that, not her. As soon as I got dressed, I grabbed the video camera I had used that day and left the house. It could shoot in low light, at least according to the advertisement. I would have to test it when I went to the bar. The resort wasn't very big, and there were only 2 bars, both with ocean views, but the Sandpiper was larger and had a dance floor. I managed to find a good spot behind some low palm trees where I could see the whole bar, but was far enough away that I wouldn't be noticed. Thanks to the zoom lens on my camera, I was able to get some very good footage. The bar wasn't too crowded, which made it easier for me to find a victim. She was wearing that damn red dress that I once loved so much, but now it filled me with anger and hatred. He put his arm around her, and it took all my self-control and willpower not to rush over and tear that bastard to pieces. I had to remind myself that I was there to gather evidence, not to end up in prison. I started filming them like 2 lovers in the Caribbean. They laughed and kissed like lovers, like Shannon and me. After about an hour, the DJ turned on the music and they started dancing. After watching them dance on the dance floor for another hour, I couldn't take it anymore and decided to go back to my room, alone. At that moment, I noticed that they were quickly leaving the dance floor. I cautiously followed them, keeping my distance so they wouldn't notice me. Soon, they reached his room, which was at the back of the resort. It was smaller than ours and was on the second floor with no view of the ocean. This guy must be on a tight budget, I thought. They entered the room, and I quickly moved closer to peek inside. Fortunately, the curtains were not completely closed and the window was slightly open, so I could hear their conversation and record everything they said. I filmed everything, absolutely everything. It was almost midnight and I started to think she would leave him to be with me, but then I heard them talking. "Are you sure these pills are safe?" she asked with some concern in her voice. How touching. "Don't worry about him, baby. He'll sleep for at least another 6 hours. He might wake up with a slight headache, but that's it. You only used 1 pill, right?" "Yes, just one." "Why? What would have happened if I'd given him 2? I don't want him to feel bad." The bastard laughed. No, don't worry. If you'd given him 2, he'd have been out for 12 hours or more. No, just give him 1 before bed, and we can spend every night together. I want you to be pregnant by the time we leave. Here's another key card to my room. If you manage to get away from him during the day, call me and we'll meet here." Then they both laughed, and it filled me with such rage that I threw up. I had heard and seen enough for one night, so I quietly left and returned to my room. Now I had to figure out how to destroy them both and make them feel the pain they had caused me. It was clear that she was going to spend every night with him, so the first thing I decided to do was change those plans. Back in my room, I reread everything I had written. As hard as it was to look at, I began to devise a plan that I hoped would ruin their fun completely. First, I had to figure out how to separate them so I could spy on the guy and find out what he was up to. I decided to catch him alone, maybe even get him drunk like Shannon did to me, and then beat him half to death while he was unconscious. He wouldn't be able to identify his attacker, and I would get away with it. Now the question was how to separate them. Then I came up with the idea of giving Shannon a day at the spa. There was a spa at the resort that offered massages, facials, and even makeup. It would be easy to buy a package and give it to her to show how much I loved her. If she tried to refuse, I would tell her that the money was non-refundable and make her feel guilty so that she would go, just like she had done to me in the past. She wouldn't be able to refuse my gift, and it would keep her busy for at least a couple of hours. That would give me enough time to spank my lover the way he deserved. I changed into shorts and went back to bed. Lying awake, I could think of nothing but the 2 of them and how I was going to kick that bastard's ass. It was around 5 in the morning when Shannon finally came back into the room. She quietly changed, got into bed, and snuggled up to me. I wanted to push her away again, but I lay still, pretending to be asleep, waiting for the right moment to wake up. A little after 7 in the morning, I started to stir and slowly pretended to wake up. Shannon was fast asleep, so I got up, took a quick shower, and then went to look for a spa. I hoped they would open early so I could buy her a package that would keep her busy for a while and allow me to run some errands. I also wanted to see if I could fly home the next morning or early in the day. I quickly found the spa and, seeing that it was open, went inside to see what packages they offered. There was a nice young woman at the front desk who helped me choose a package. I was more interested in how long the treatments would take than how much they cost. After choosing a package that lasted about 3 hours, I asked her what the earliest time she could book it for was. The woman checked her computer and said that the first available time would be at 2 o'clock p.m. I thought about it for a moment and then decided to go ahead and book the package to surprise my wife. With that done, I went to explore the area, deciding that Shannon needed to sleep, as the night with her lover must have exhausted her. Around 9 in the morning, I returned to the room and found her still fast asleep, so I rummaged through her handbag and found her mobile phone. I checked her text messages and read one he had sent in the last hour. Anthony, you were amazing last night. Any chance we can get away from Stu for some fun during the day? My anger began to rise again, but I held it back. I was good at this, but now I knew the end was near. Shannon stirred, and I hung up and kissed her gently on the forehead. Good morning, sleepyhead. Sorry about last night about falling asleep and ruining our dinner plans, but I have a surprise for you. She smiled and yawned. What kind of surprise? I booked you a day at the spa to apologize for last night and show you how much I love you. Even in my half-asleep state, I noticed her flinch slightly and the uncertainty in her eyes. At that moment, I realized she was wondering if she really loved me. I looked into her eyes. Are you okay? Don't you like my gift? Oh no, I love it. I just wanted you to ask first. She smiled weakly. If I had asked, it wouldn't have been a surprise. Listen, you don't have to rush to the spa right now. I booked it for 2 p.m. so we can spend some time together, okay? She nodded. You're so thoughtful, thank you. When she kissed me on the cheek, I thought she smelled like sailors. What a lying slut. Well, why don't you freshen up and we'll go have breakfast? I got out of bed and she sat down. Then she got out of bed, grabbed her handbag and went into the bathroom. I knew what she was going to do, but I didn't want to arouse her suspicion, so I went to look out the window and saw a curious scene. Anthony was sitting by the pool, chatting with a couple of young women and looking at his phone. Then I saw him type something and suddenly put his phone away. She must have told him about my surprise gift, but he didn't seem too upset. Soon his attention returned to the two women, and they seemed to be laughing happily at something one of them had said. Then he made a gesture with his hand, and all three disappeared from view. It occurred to me that perhaps Anthony was making a plan in case Shannon couldn't make it to the afternoon entertainment. That could prove very useful. About an hour later, Shannon and I were standing at the buffet, filling our plates. More accurately, I was filling my plate, and she was filling hers with fruit and coffee. Not hungry, baby. Are you on your period? I asked. Yeah, probably. I don't feel like eating at all, she replied, and turned away. I couldn't help wondering what Anthony had written in his message, because it seemed to be bothering her. But it didn't matter, because my plan seemed to be having the desired effect on them, or at least on her. After breakfast, we decided to take a walk on the beach and look at the ocean. I took my camera with me and took pictures of the beach, the palm trees, and Shannon. She smiled politely when I told her how beautiful she was and what a wonderful mother she would make. Then she flinched, and her face showed uncertainty and guilt. What's wrong, baby? Are you okay? I knew that guilt was starting to gnaw at her. No, I'm fine, just a little tired. Do you mind if I go back to the room and take a nap before the spa treatments? Of course, no problem. I know it's not much fun being on holiday and having your period. Lie down, I'll wait for you in the room after your spa treatment. I'm sure it will do you good. She turned and walked back into the spa without even kissing me goodbye. Well, I'd be rebuffing her for a long time to come. All that was left was to find Anthony and make him pay. As I continued walking along the beach, lost in my thoughts, I saw two couples walking towards me. I recognized the women as the ones I had spoken to earlier that morning with Anthony. Now they were with two huge guys who looked like Vikings. As I got closer, I heard their conversation. Come on, baby, don't be like that. You knew Dave and I wanted to go fishing, and they had 2 spots? We'll be back for dinner. Sure, you can do whatever you want while we're stuck here at the hotel. Babe, there's plenty to do here. Go shopping, hang out by the pool or the beach. You can even go to the gym. Are you saying I'm fat? Look at you talking. No, babe, that's not what I meant. There's just a lot to do here, that's all. I realized he was going crazy when they walked past me on their way back to the hotel, but he didn't give up to no avail. After wandering around the beach for a while, I decided to go back and see what the love-struck guy was up to. I was afraid that Shannon hadn't gone to the spa and had stayed with him, but if that was the case, I could take a few more pictures of them together. I wandered around the spa for over an hour and then found myself at Anthony's door. I could hear voices from inside, but not Shannon's. I carefully got my camera ready and moved closer to the window. It was very risky because it was daytime and people could walk by and see me. I decided it would be best to place the camera on the windowsill, where I could see the room, and leave it to film. After setting up the camera, I walked along the path and found a spot where I could watch the door and see who was coming out. Time dragged on, but my patience was rewarded. The two women I had seen with Anthony in the morning by the pool and then on the beach with two guys came out of his room. They were smiling and giggling as if they knew some kind of secret. As soon as they were out of sight, I grabbed the camera and went back to my room. Shannon wasn't due back from the spa for another hour, so I had time to watch what I had recorded. As soon as I got back to the room, I took out my laptop and downloaded all the videos I had taken since we arrived. Most of it was of Shannon, but then I looked at what I had just filmed with the two girls in his room. It seemed like they had found something to do while their boyfriends were out deep-sea fishing. Anthony had convinced them to join him for a threesome. And then another idea came to me. If I timed it right, I would go home and Shannon would stay here and try to figure out what the hell had happened. I knew she'd probably try to beat me up again tonight, so I'd just repeat everything and let her think I'd passed out. Then, if I was lucky, she'd meet Anthony at the bar, dance, get drunk, and go back to her room. If I could slip a pill into their drinks at the end of the night at the bar, they'd be unconscious by the time they got to his room. The timing had to be perfect, but in life things rarely go as planned. The second part of the plan was to record Anthony's latest conquests on video. I must admit, I was a little jealous of this bastard who had managed to seduce two very beautiful women. I had several videotapes and I made 2 copies of his daily exploits. Now all that remained was to decide which rooms to leave them in. I also made a copy of everything I had recorded up to that point on another video recorder, just in case. I went down to reception and sent the tape home to my brother Frank with a note, asking him not to watch it or tell anyone I had sent it. This was in case my plan failed or Shannon and Anthony found out what I was up to and wanted to harm me. If I was eliminated, at least the disc I sent to my brother would show the authorities who was behind it. Looking at the time, I saw that Shannon should be finishing her work at the spa soon, so I decided to take a walk around the resort to find out which rooms the two women and their boyfriends were staying in. I was sure their boyfriends would be interested to know what they had been up to while they were out fishing on the open sea. Soon I saw the two women I was looking for leave the pool, both with towels in their hands. Following them, I realized they were heading to their rooms, and as I had expected, I saw them enter different rooms located next to each other. This took care of one part of my plan. Now, if everything went according to plan and Shannon and Anthony acted the same way they had the night before, by morning, I would be able to completely ruin the rest of their trip. I returned to my room to call the airline and find out when the earliest flight would be the next morning. The earliest I could get was 10 a.m., which was later than I had hoped, but I booked the ticket anyway. Then I went back to the front desk and told them that my wife and I had to leave the next morning due to family circumstances and that we were leaving at 8 a.m. They sympathized with me and wished us well. I thanked them and returned to my room. Now I was determined to stick to my plan no matter what. If things didn't go as I hoped, I would still get on the plane in the morning and return home before Shannon. At least I would have time to ruin her mood before I returned. But if by some miracle everything went according to plan, she would be stuck here for a few days, maybe even a few weeks, before she returned home. And I would have time to really ruin her mood. The plan was pretty simple. First, let Shannon think her water plan had worked and pretend I was asleep, so she and Anthony could spend the evening together. Second, I'd go back to the bar, watch them, and wait for the right moment to slip what Shannon had planned to use against me into their drinks. If I timed it right, they should pass out just before they reached his room, or as soon as they entered it. Again, the timing had to be perfect. Third, as soon as they're in the room, I'll go in, drag Shannon to our room, and then go back and take everything Anthony took with him. I started taking his wallet, money, passport, credit cards, clothes, everything he took with him on the trip. Then I found the numbers of the two women Anthony had met that day and slipped the discs with the recordings under their doors, hoping that one of their boyfriends would see them first and play them. I'm sure they won't be too happy to see what their girlfriends were up to while they were away. Anthony's room number is clearly marked on the video, so I'm sure they'll find it without any problems. Fifth, do the same thing to Shannon that I did to Anthony. Take everything she took with her on the trip and leave her only the clothes she's wearing and her handbag. I'll leave a note in her empty handbag so she knows who's to blame. So everything was ready, and now all I had to do was wait for everyone to play their part. Shannon returned to the room at 5:30 p.m. looking more relaxed and radiant than ever. It hurt to think that she had destroyed our marriage and that I would never be with this beautiful woman again. Stu, thank you for the day at the spa. It was amazing. I feel like a completely new woman. She was truly glowing. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. When I first told you about it, you didn't seem very enthusiastic, but I'm so glad you liked it. I just wanted to show you how much I love you. I saw her flinch again, and tears welled up in her eyes. Thanks again. I really loved it, and I love you. This time she said it with much more conviction and feeling. Anytime, baby. We have a table booked for 7 for dinner. Let's relax and then get ready. She nodded and went into the bathroom, taking her handbag with her. A few minutes later, she came out with 2 bottles of water and handed me one. Here, drink up. I want to go dancing tonight, so you'd better start moisturizing your skin. She winked at me. Okay, just let me go to the bathroom first. I chuckled. Once in the bathroom, I did the same thing I had done before. Emptied the bottle and then filled it with water from one of the bottles on the table. I flushed the toilet to make it look like I was ready to come out, and returned to the bedroom. I continued drinking water, and after 15 minutes I began pretending to be asleep. Soon I was snoring loudly, pretending to be asleep, and watching Shannon get ready for her last date with Anthony. Though she had no idea, she went into the bathroom and started taking a shower. I quickly jumped out of bed and grabbed her phone to see what her lover had written to her. Shannon, can't make it out today. Stu bought me a spa package. Can't turn it down. I have other plans for today. Do we have other plans for today? Oh, yes. After reading that crap, I wasn't so angry anymore because I knew the end was near. Now, all I had to do was follow them to the bar, watch them dance for a couple of hours, and then spike their drinks. Simple. Well, maybe not that simple. I rummaged through my bag and found Anthony's room keycard. I slipped it into my pocket and put everything back where I found it. Shannon took a little longer to collect her thoughts, and then she did something completely unexpected. She sat down on the bed next to me and gently touched my cheek. Baby, after this week, I'll be all yours, I promise. I just need to get this out of my head before we start a family. I wish I could say you'd understand, but I have to do this. I need these few days. I wanted to tell you, but I know you'd leave me, and I need you more than you know right now. I love you very much, but I really have to do this. I really do love you, Stu. At first, I thought she had realized I was awake, but then I realized she was trying to ease her guilt, but it was too late. Soon, she was dressed and out of the house. As soon as the door closed, I was on my feet, dressed and running after her. They ended up going to the same bar as last night. There were more people there than the night before, and I even saw 2 women and their beach boyfriends. If my plan worked, they wouldn't be together until the next morning. I took the same seat as the night before, made myself comfortable, and, armed with my trusty camera, began recording the evening's events. The evening went as I had expected, and soon they were sitting at a table, talking and laughing. It was getting late, and I realized that I would soon have to order them drinks. I quickly made my way to the bar, trying not to let any of them notice me. There, I found a free seat next to the waitresses who were setting tables and taking orders. I sat down and ordered a beer, keeping my eyes on them so they wouldn't notice me. As I watched them, I noticed that a waitress approached their table to take their drink order. After receiving the order, she immediately returned to the bar and told the bartender what was needed. I was lucky that it was her only order. I listened to what she said to the bartender, and when he went to fill the order, I called another bartender and ordered exactly the same drinks. The first bartender placed the drinks on the waitress's tray, but was distracted by a conversation with another waitress. The drinks were brought to me, I paid for them, took 1 cup, carried it away from the bar, broke open 1 capsule and added it to the drink, stirring the powder. There was a slight hissing sound, but after mixing it with the drink, everything looked normal. I did the same with the second capsule and was ready to move on. Taking a glass in each hand, I began to squeeze past the waitress, managing to switch my attention between her and the bar. I acted quickly, and luckily there were enough people in the bar that no one noticed me. I walked past the waitress and turned to take the drinks to the happy couple. I left the bar just as quickly and returned to my spot outside to watch and wait. The waitress brought the drinks, and I watched, hoping I had chosen the right moment. It was just after 1 in the morning, so if everything went as I had planned, they would be partying until 11 in the morning. That fit perfectly with the rest of my plan. All I had to do was finish their drinks and get back to Anthony's room before they passed out. They sat there sipping their drinks, and I started to get nervous. What if they didn't finish? Anthony leaned over and said something to Shannon. She smiled, and they both quickly finished their drinks and left the bar. Thank God. I quickly followed them as they seemed to be in a hurry to get back to the room. This time, I noticed that Shannon was starting to stumble and seemed to be having trouble walking. Anthony took her by the hand, put his arm around her neck, and supported her. When they reached his room, Anthony also started to stagger a little. By the time they reached the door, she could barely stand, and he was swaying more and more. He fumbled for the key card and, after a few weak attempts, managed to open the door and staggered into the room. The door closed. I waited a few minutes, then took the key card from Shannon's bag and opened the door. When I entered the room, I heard Anthony's voice. "What's wrong with you, baby? You didn't drink that much." He was slurring his words, and I realized he was about to start a hangover. When I entered the room, I saw Shannon lying face down on the bed, unconscious. Anthony was shaking her, trying to wake her up. "Come on, baby, it's time to get down to business." He looked in my direction and saw me. "Hey, who are you?" He started to straighten up and almost fell over. "I'm just her husband, you idiot. Be a good boy and pass out so I can get her out of here." As if on cue, he slowly collapsed to the floor and didn't move. I walked closer to the bed and started looking for his mobile phone, which was lying on the floor next to him. Picking it up, I wanted to see what kind of messages and photos he had on it. Soon I had scrolled through hundreds of photos, most of which were innocent enough, but then I discovered that he hadn't paid. He had a folder with dozens of photos of women. I didn't recognize most of them, but I found a few pictures of Shannon. As I continued to look through the photos, I recognized some of them as teachers from the same school where Shannon taught, as well as the wives of several teachers. Well, this is interesting. Anthony seems to enjoy having fun with other men's wives. This is going to end very badly. I looked through his contact list and decided that these photos, in addition to the photos of my soon-to-be ex-wife, should be accessible to everyone on his list. It took me a few minutes to mark and send all these photos to all these people, including the husbands of the women he had photographed. When he got home, he was in for an unpleasant surprise. I sent the photos and videos to Shannon's phone, and then from her phone to mine. Later, I used them for my own purposes. Blackmail, you say? After turning off his phone, I started gathering all his belongings, clothes, toiletries, and other items he had taken with him on the trip, and just carelessly stuffed them into a suitcase. I also searched his pockets and took all his cash, wallet, credit cards, driver's license, and passport. I knew that without his passport, it would be very difficult for him to leave the island. After finishing packing his suitcase, I turned my attention to Shannon. She was still lying face down on the bed, one leg hanging off the edge. I very carefully turned her over onto her back, picked her up, and carried her to my room. There, I laid her on our bed and returned to the bastard's room to collect all his belongings. I left his phone, wallet, and cash, as I felt I should get some compensation for them. After looking around his room, I made sure he hadn't taken anything with him. I even took off his shoes, and on the way back to the room I found a rubbish bin and threw his suitcase and shoes in it, covering them with rubbish so they wouldn't be found. Back in my room, I started packing my suitcase and Shannon's suitcase, handling her belongings as carefully as I had handled Anthony's. I planned to leave only her clothes, her handbag, and her empty wallet, which contained only the note I had left. When I finished packing, I noticed that it was already 4 in the morning, and I had to be at the airport by 9. Since Shannon had finished drinking around 2 in the morning, she would be unconscious until at least noon. Anthony, I suspected, would arrive around 10 in the morning, and I would be able to leave before they woke up. There was one more thing to do. Leaving the room, I took the 2 discs with the recordings I had made earlier and headed straight for the rooms where the 2 women and their boyfriends were staying. Very quietly and quickly, I slipped the discs under the doors of their rooms and returned to my room. There, I looked at Shannon sleeping peacefully on the bed, and I was overcome with a feeling of immense loss and sadness. I wanted so much to start a family with her, but she had other plans, and I couldn't forgive her. I walked around the room to make sure I had gathered all my belongings, then picked up Shannon's suitcase and returned to the same rubbish bin where I had thrown Anthony's suitcase and her snakes. Back in my room, I checked Shannon's handbag to make sure it was empty and that there was no money, credit cards, or passport inside. I wanted it to be as difficult for her to return home as it was for Anthony. Sitting down on one of the 2 chairs in the room, I slumped to the floor exhausted but immediately started thinking about what I would do when I got home. First, I would empty our bank accounts, pay off all our loans, and close all our credit cards. Then I would gather all my belongings and take them out of the house. I was sure I would have to find a storage unit to put everything in, but I didn't care. I just wanted to leave. Leave our house in this fake marriage. Without noticing how time had passed, I dozed off. And when I woke up, it was almost 7 in the morning. I got up from the chair where I had been sleeping, walked over to the bed, looked at Shannon, and then carefully picked her up and carried her out of the room. I went down to the pool and left Shannon on one of the sun loungers. Since I was leaving, I didn't want her to be there when they came to clean the room and prepare it for the next guests. When I returned to the room, I grabbed my bags and looked around one last time to make sure I hadn't forgotten anything. I still had Anthony's phone, but then I had an idea. I went back to the pool and grabbed Shannon's phone. I started sending all those photos and videos to everyone on her contact list, with a few exceptions. She had several nieces and nephews who were too young to see such things, but I was sure her mother, father, sisters, and colleagues would find them interesting. I went to the front desk and asked for a piece of tape. I took the battery out of her phone, stuck a very small piece of tape over the contacts, and then put the battery back in. It would look like the battery was dead. I also made sure she didn't have a charger. Without money, it would take her a long time to charge her phone. It was around 8 in the morning when I heard shouting and screaming. It was the boyfriend of one of the two women I had seen with Anthony yesterday. Apparently, their ex-boyfriends had seen the video I had slipped under their door. "You're a whore. Tell your family that the wedding is off and I don't want to see you anymore. Get home yourself, bitch." One guy was yelling at his girlfriend. The other just stared at him with a stone expression on his face while his girlfriend begged him. "Baby, please don't leave, I'm sorry. It was a really stupid mistake and besides, you got revenge on him," she cried. "You're a whore. Go back to your new boyfriend." "But I don't think things will get any better," he said so coldly that I shivered with fear. I wonder what they did to poor old Anthony. I'll probably never know. The next sound I heard was an ambulance siren stopping in front of the house. I saw the manager come out of his office and quickly lead the medics down the path to Anthony's room. I really hoped he was okay. As people began to gather around to see what had caused such a commotion, I calmly hailed a taxi and headed to the airport. Turning on my phone, I noticed that I had a voicemail message. I turned on my voicemail and listened to the message from Frank's brother. "Stu, what's going on over there? I've got a bunch of photos of Shannon. What's going on? Do you know about this? Call me when you hear this message." When I got to the airport and was waiting to board the plane, I called him back and explained the whole situation. How Shannon had been messing around with Anthony while we were on holiday and how she had been trying to get pregnant by him. My brother was shocked and thought I was joking at first, but then I asked him to watch the video more closely. He said he was very sorry about what had happened and that if I needed anything, I should call him. I thanked him, hung up, and soon found myself on a plane flying home alone. When I turned on my phone right after landing, I found a dozen voicemails and over 30 text messages threatening physical violence. Apparently, the photos and videos I sent were very popular. I picked up my things, left the long-term car park, and drove home. On the way home, I started planning what to do next. Divorce was one option, but I knew she would get half of everything, and that wasn't acceptable to me. She was cheating on me, and in a divorce, she would still get everything. It didn't seem fair. As I drove, another plan began to form in my head, and I started mentally compiling a list of what I would need and how to get it. She had destroyed our marriage, and I was going to make her life hell. When I got home, I called my brother and asked if he could help me move my things out of the house over the next few days. I wanted to be done before Shannon got back so she would come home to an empty house. Finally, I turned on my phone and found over 20 voicemails and more than a dozen texts. Many were from Shannon's sister, asking what was going on and why Shannon wasn't answering her calls. Some were from other members of Shannon's family, asking mostly the same questions. I was glad there were no voice messages or text messages from Shannon herself. That meant her phone was off and she probably hadn't realized what had happened yet. I smiled as I imagined her finally turning on her phone and seeing all the text and voice messages asking about the photos and videos she had sent from her phone. She was in for a very unpleasant surprise. The first thing I did was block all our credit cards and transfer all the money from our joint bank account to my personal account. Then I started gathering all my clothes and other personal items that I wanted to keep. I threw away all the gifts Shannon had given me over the years, except for those that had some value. I decided to sell those online or take them to a pawn shop. As soon as I got home, I turned off the landline so that no one could contact me except on my mobile phone. It was around 11 p.m. when I finally looked at my phone and saw several messages and voicemails from Shannon. It seemed that she had managed to get her phone working again. The first few messages were like this. "Where are you? Why did you leave and leave me here? Are you okay? I think I've been mugged." Then the tone of the messages changed when she realized what had happened. And I'm sure she received a lot of messages and voicemails about the photos that had been sent from her phone to everyone in her contact list. Why? Why did you do this to me? Couldn't we have talked first? I just ignored the rest of her messages, thinking it would only upset her more. The next day was very stressful. I didn't know when Shannon would be able to get home, so I had to act fast. First, I went to the shop to gather the rest of my things and rent a large enough storage unit. Then I went to the bank and made sure there wasn't much money left in our joint account. I transferred the rest of the money to my business account, which I was going to close, take the money and run away, but before I left for good, I still had something to do. The house we lived in was very small. We decided to start small and buy a bigger house when the family grew. It was a simple house with 2 bedrooms, a small bathroom, and a small kitchen. Nothing special, but I had a home improvement business and we were really hoping to turn this house into something special. Now I had other plans and I was rushing around town gathering everything I needed to make Shannon's arrival at this house unforgettable. Since I was a renovator, I knew a thing or two about construction, load-bearing walls, and so on. Armed with this knowledge, I was going to start a radical renovation of our house, but not in the traditional way. Later that morning, my brother Frank arrived in his pickup truck, and after discussing my situation, we started loading all my belongings into his car. It took more than 5 hours and 3 trips to the storage facility, but by evening I had officially moved out. I didn't tell Frank about my plans for the house or the surprise Shannon had in store for me. I knew he would try to talk me out of it, so I never mentioned it to him. However, he asked what my plans were for the immediate future. Just get out of town and leave this nightmare marriage behind. I'm not going to file for divorce, but when she comes back, I won't be here. She can have the house, I don't care, but that's all she'll get from me. Frank just shook his head. You know that won't work. She'll just hire a lawyer and track you down. Just divorce that cheating woman. If you try to run away, it will only make things worse when she finds you. I understand that you're angry and hurt, but don't let your emotions make decisions for you. Pull yourself together, hire a solicitor, and give her half. No. That bitch cheated on me and tried to have a child with that bastard, and now she wants to pass him off as mine. She doesn't deserve anything, and that's exactly what she'll get. You see, I'm not going to divorce her. Oh no. I'm just going to leave her with no money in the bank and all her dirty laundry hanging out for everyone to see. Frank knew it was useless to try to talk me out of it. I'm stubborn, and when I'm in that state, there's not much that can change my mind. He left, but not without telling me to think things over and not do anything rash. I had been thinking about it ever since I saw her kissing her lover. Now it was time to put my plan into action. In the evening, I started working around the house and worked until morning. I still didn't know when Shannon would be back, so I had to work quickly. One thing worked in my favor: the snow. It looked like another heavy snowstorm was coming, which had caused several major airports to close. Flights to and from the airport would be canceled, giving me more time to finish the repairs. Another positive aspect of the storm was that it brought 20 to 30 centimeters of snow. There was still a 30-centimeter layer of snow on the ground and roofs, which would help my plan come to fruition. Since I had only been back for 2 days, I rarely answered my phone, as I could see that most of the calls were from Shannon. Finally, I decided to answer her call, but only to get some information out of her, nothing more. Baby, please listen to me. It was a mistake, just a huge, stupid mistake on my part. I didn't want things to go this far. I'll do anything. Just forgive me. I could hear her crying, but it didn't make any impression on me. I didn't want anything to do with her, but at that moment I needed to keep my cool. Give her a little hope and pull her out of my arms at the right moment. Shannon, you hurt me more than anyone has ever hurt me. I don't know if I can ever forgive you or trust you again. I just want to know why. Why did you do this to me? To us? Don't you love me? Am I not enough for you? I spoke calmly, but there was sadness in my voice. I wanted to scream into the phone that she was just a whore and a slut that I never wanted to see again. I had to let her know that we still had a chance to be together. Baby, please let me explain that it didn't mean anything and he means nothing to me. You're everything to me. You're my life, my reason for living. Please, God, forgive me. She burst into tears. I waited a few minutes, then said, Baby, I just don't know. I loved you, but you broke my heart. I don't think we can fix this. No, baby, we can fix this, and our love will be even stronger, and our bond will be even stronger if we can get through this. Please, baby, can you at least wait until I get home so we can talk? I could hear the desperation in her voice. I don't know. When will you be back? Well, there's one problem. I don't have my passport or plane ticket. My sister is transferring money to me right now because all my credit cards were stolen. By the way, please call the credit card companies and ask them to block my cards immediately. It was amazing how she went from begging me to come back to asking me to block her credit cards. What a character. Okay, I'll do that right away. So you don't know when you'll be home? I think in a few days. I spoke to the US consulate and they'll get me a new passport. Okay, call me when you're ready to leave, all right? I will. Stu. Yes. I love you. See you when you get back. I hung up. So she wouldn't be back for a few days. Great, I thought. I'll have plenty of time to finish the repairs and do everything I need to start a new life without her. The next day, Frank called to see how I was doing and invited me out to dinner. I accepted, as I hadn't eaten a home-cooked meal in over a week. I had been living on pizza and Chinese food, and after talking to Frank, I assured him that I wasn't going to do anything rash. Then Shannon called. Hi, sweetheart. I just found out that I'll be getting my new passport in a couple of days. Now I just need to buy a plane ticket home. I can fly out in a few days, and if I catch an early flight, I'll be home by evening. Will you meet me at the airport? I really want to talk to you as soon as possible. That's not a good idea, Shannon. Have your sister pick you up and take you home. We'll talk when you get there. I just lied to her. By the time she gets home, I'll be at least 100 miles away. Okay, baby. I love you. And I know that if you give me a chance, we can work this out. Okay, Stu? Yeah, sure. We'll talk and we'll see. I'm not promising anything. I was lying and she was lying to me. Now I knew when she would be home. And I had enough time to do a few more things to cover my tracks before I left town. First, I sold the truck I used to drive to work and bought another one. Used but in good condition, but registered it in a friend's name. Second, I had to tell the guys who worked for me that I was going out of business because of my upcoming divorce. I apologized for telling them about it, but I couldn't leave without telling them what had happened and why. Then I called an old friend from college who now lives in Colorado. When we finished college, he said I should come and go into business with him. He said there were both winter and summer homes there, so we would have work all year round. He was happy to hear from me, but surprised about what had happened between Shannon and me, as he had known her when we were dating, and always thought we were perfect for each other. I asked if his offer about working at the college was still open or if he needed a good handyman. He said that now, after the marijuana laws had changed, he had more work, his workload had tripled in the last year, and he would be very happy if I came and worked for him. I asked if I could work unofficially, as I didn't want Shannon to know where I had gone, and I didn't want her to receive any money from me. Everything was ready, and all I had to do was leave. Shannon called me several times a day to tell me she loved me and to ask me to forgive her. She also told me every day when she would be home, and that I would be in better shape by the time she returned. The day she was supposed to come home finally arrived. I packed my things into my new truck and cleared all my belongings out of the house. Everything that was left belonged to Shannon or had no value to me. I left very early in the morning because I wanted to get out of town before anyone noticed. I asked my neighbor across the street to do me a favor and let me know when Shannon came home. I told him I would call and let him know what time she would be back, as I had a surprise for her. He had no idea what was going on or that there were problems in our marriage. He gladly agreed and said he would wait for my call the next day. Everything was ready to leave town and head south to a new life without Shannon. It would take me at least 2 days to get to my friend's house, and by then Shannon would be home. As I drove, I felt less angry and more calm than I had in the last week. Ever since I saw Shannon and Anthony together by the pool, I felt like my life had gone down the toilet, and now I was starting to climb out of that cesspool of despair. Around noon, Shannon called and said she would be home tomorrow, around 4 o'clock. She asked again if I could pick her up from the airport, but I said I had things to do and would come home after her. She could just let me in when she arrived. Then I called my neighbor and asked him to be ready with his video camera to capture the surprise I had in store for my wife. The next day, I was in Colorado, just an hour's drive from my friend's house when Shannon called. The house, it just collapsed. It must be because of the snow. I just put the key in the door and turned it when I heard a loud crack and the roof collapsed. My God, our house is gone, she cried. Shannon, don't worry. I'm sure your parents are still waiting for you in your room. I've got everything sorted, I said cheerfully. What are you talking about? Our house is gone. How can you be so happy? Now she was getting angry. Good. My plan had gone exactly as planned. I had prepared the house so that it would collapse when she opened the door. I had installed temporary supports in the basement and then cut all the floor joists with a chainsaw. The lock on the front door was connected to a switch that activated a winch I had bought at a pawn shop for a very cheap price. Then, using a block and ropes attached to the temporary supports, she turned the key, activated the winch, and our house collapsed. See, dear, our house didn't just collapse because of the snow. I had a hand in it. I did to our house what you did to our marriage. Good luck finding a new place to live. I'm almost in my new house. With that, I left her and called my neighbor. Stu, you won't believe what just happened. Your house just collapsed. It probably couldn't handle all that snow, but I don't think there was that much. At least, not enough to cause that much damage. I filmed everything, and luckily your wife is okay. She was trying to open the door when it happened, and then bang, she just fell on top of it. He was so upset. I asked him to email me the video when he had a chance, and I wanted to keep a copy. After talking to him, I turned off my phone and continued on my way to my new life. Epilogue. It's been almost 3 years now, and I've settled here in Colorado and am living a comfortable life. I keep in touch with a few friends in Minnesota and keep an eye on what's going on there. I didn't want to contact my family directly, as I was sure they would tell Shannon where I was living. It seems that Shannon got what she wanted and was pregnant by Anthony. For a while, she told everyone that he was mine and that I couldn't be the father and had run away like a coward. Even my mother believed her because she wanted a grandchild. I contacted a friend who, in turn, contacted my brother and told him to have Shannon take a DNA test on the child and my brother. If I was a distant relative, I would have a close resemblance to my brother. If I wasn't a distant relative, there would be no resemblance. Like an idiot, she agreed. The results came back and my mother kicked her out of the house, screaming that she never to show her face on the doorstep with that child. As for Anthony, it seems he was badly beaten by those two guys at the resort and spent over a week in the hospital before he could return home. When he finally did, several other gentlemen, or rather ex-husbands, were waiting for him to finish what the other two had started. Since then, he has left town for parts unknown, but rumor has it that he can't do that anymore. It seems his days as a player are over. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel and stay tuned for the next video.